What's up, guys? Welcome to I'm Outraged, episode 29. Damn, it feels good to be a Seahawks fan right now. Russell Wilson did it again, guys. If you own him in Dynasty, is there a better feeling on this planet? I mean, the only better feeling is the way I feel as this Seahawks fan that's witnessed this unparalleled, unfortunate passing game over the years, the throttling of Russell Wilson ever since his era took start. And now we're finally seeing Russell Wilson with full command of this offense. What's interesting, and I brought this up to Matt Kelly on the last show that we did for the Sonic Truth, is that Russell Wilson's pass attempts really haven't climbed from necessarily his career average or his career highs, which is quite shocking. I mean, right now, Russell Wilson is averaging, since that last game, 34.3 pass attempts per game. His career high is pushing 35. Prior to entering this last game, he was averaging about 32, which is close to his league average. So it's a far cry from the 45 pass attempts that Matt Ryan is throwing per game. I mean, he's averaging 10, 11 less pass attempts per game. But he's also maintaining this absurd completion percentage, which at this point is still at 76.7%. We did see an unfortunate decline in that touchdown rate, which was 14.3 coming into the game, which is now 13.6. It is still absolutely ridiculous. Russell Wilson is dealing like we've never seen. And it's really almost ironic because I unleashed this stat upon the world where I said in Russell Wilson's career, in any season, you go ahead and pick it. He's never had more than 2 games in a single season where he threw more than 4 passing touchdowns. Here we are to open the season with 3 games of 4 or more passing touchdowns. I don't know if I willed it to happen. I'd like to think that it was a lot to do with me and a lot less to do with Russ. But the fact of the matter is he's the one throwing the football, and I probably had nothing to do with it. But the point is we are seeing Russell Wilson at an all-time high in confidence, in ability, in surrounding cast. Everything is going their direction. Of course, the Chris Carson injury is a big letdown. Thank God we didn't lose him for the season. That was one of the dirtier tackles I've seen in quite some time. And I read in so many different spots online, there were people actually justifying the tackle, saying, oh, he's so big that, it happened in a split second and he couldn't control his gator roll. Listen, you absolutely knew the guy was down based on where your hands were, what you could see. There was no reason to continue the grip through the roll. Who the fuck gator rolls? Now, I've spent over 10 years doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and a gator roll is definitely a prelude/wrestling move to a finish on the mats. I can complete a choke using a gator roll. But if I'm tackling a guy in football and I weigh 300 pounds and he's about to be under a pile, I'm not going to roll his fucking leg over like a Barbie doll and try and twist it off his body. He's already on the ground. And people say that it happened so quickly he couldn't figure it out. You'd be surprised how fast the human brain realizes things, especially when we're talking about safety, which is like this built-in system in your brain. You're always aware of it, whether it's hurting other people or hurting yourself or being aware of surroundings, whether it's a dog or a car or a fucking plane falling out of the sky. You're aware of this all the time, and that system is running in the front every day of your life. You're hyper aware of it. So to think that this guy didn't know what he was doing is absolutely ridiculous. So truly unfortunate to lose Chris Carson for whatever duration of time he's missing for. But the good news is Russell Wilson is still dealing, and he's torched just about everybody ever. And at this point through his career, I believe he has the most passing touchdowns in the first 3 games in NFL history. So it's an amazing start. And if you've got him in fantasy, if you've got him in Dynasty, most importantly, then you've got to be ecstatic right now. The question becomes, when we were going into the season and you looked at Dynasty ranks, where was Russell Wilson ranked versus the field? And I think there were a lot of Dynasty startups where Russell Wilson was being pushed to that sort of quarterback 6 range amongst the group, which is super interesting because hard to believe at this point you could have anybody in front of Russell Wilson except Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Kyler Murray, Dak Prescott are in that group, and Russell Wilson right there at 4 or 5. The big difference being age with a couple of these guys. But if this is the Russell Wilson, and again, this is a highly unsustainable moment that we are witnessing right now. Highly unsustainable. But if anybody could do it, it is Russell Wilson. Those are the guys that I would put in front of him. Deshaun Watson, I've always had my ups and downs about him, but felt like he was in this tier, this top 6 quarterback tier, and he deserves to be there. But Russell Wilson, even at 32 years old, being 7 years older than Deshaun Watson, is still a player I prefer, considering the fact that Deshaun Watson's not a high-volume passer. The reason that I love Dak Prescott was the weapons around him, the amount of pass volume he was being allotted, the running back that he had as a weapon out of the backfield, just everything was in his favor. And when it comes to volume in many of these fantasy leagues, I prefer the guy that's going to get to throw the ball 607 times a year versus the guy in Russell Wilson's case who for the most of his career has only had, 515 pass attempts, 490 pass attempts. You're literally getting 3.25 more Russell Wilson pass attempt games in Dak Prescott. So that was valuable. But it's unreasonable to think that Russell Wilson, even on the lower pass volume, isn't more valuable than Dak Prescott in a lot of ways. So it's exciting to see what is going on. And it's brought me to 2 points. I have 2 points since watching the Seahawks over the beginning of this year. Number 1. Tyler Lockett is forever criminally undervalued. There's no doubt about it. There is absolutely no doubt about it. Think about every draft, every league you play in, where Tyler Lockett is valued. Now, smart fantasy gamers, they know that Tyler Lockett is just a phenomenal talent. The guy is always making plays. He's a consistent in terms of health. He's got his role in this offense. He's a guarantee for production. His floor is incredibly high. But it's high the way that Tyler Boyd's is. It's high the way that Jarvis Landry's is. And that is, to me, a big reason why Tyler Lockett has just never gotten this deserved hype. He's always been valued at that Tyler Boyd level equivalent. Even though over the last 3 years, so currently right now, Tyler Lockett is number 2 at the wide receiver position in overall fantasy scoring. Last year, he finished as the wide receiver 13, and the year prior to that, he finished as the wide receiver 16. So basically, he just keeps getting better. And on top of that, he's consistently been a wide receiver 15 or better, but he's being valued at the wide receiver 20 or later. Go do the math on it. He is. It's an incredible value with him. I mean, let me put this in front of you. If you have to think twice about any of these scenarios I'm about to lay out before you, then you probably have Tyler Lockett ranked at wide receiver 20 or later. So who would you rather have, Terry McLaurin or Tyler Lockett? Who would you rather have, Deontay Johnson or Tyler Lockett? Who would you rather have, Cooper Kupp or Tyler Lockett? If you have any of these 3 guys over Tyler Lockett, then you absolutely value him the wide receiver 20 or later, but he has proven time and time again that he is significantly more valuable than any of these other wide receivers. Russell Wilson trusts him. The way this offense has evolved, Tyler Lockett is just finding himself open routinely. I mean, on the year, Tyler Lockett is it's so mind-bending to see what's going on right now. 82.8% catch rate. 260 yards, 4 touchdowns, 24 receptions in 3 games. 3 games, he's averaging 9.7 targets a game. That's crazy. The ascension of Tyler Lockett, the fantasy scorer, is unbelievable. But his value in Dynasty and his production is not paralleling. There's no parallel to the climb. You can still get Tyler Lockett at some bullshit discount because people just don't value him accordingly. And I realize at this point that Tyler Lockett is 28 years old now, and there is the wide receiver apex, the same way that there will be for Keenan Allen or even Michael Thomas. Is Michael Thomas being held to the same standard? Probably not. The reason many people like Michael Thomas, of course, being the wide receiver 1 and an insane volume, and that is going to be what brings us through some of these topics, is sort of that volume difference. But Tyler Lockett is being undervalued criminally almost. So I own him in a few spots. At the beginning of the year, Matt Kelly and I talked about the fact that we believed that DK Metcalf ascending to an elite fantasy talent would require Tyler Lockett to take a step back. And I still think that's partially true. But the fact of the matter is that Tyler Lockett is playing on another level right now, and none of us should be surprised whatsoever by it. But regardless, I'm blown away by what Russell Wilson is doing, and I'm so happy that you've got DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett on each side of the field, and Russ can just deal all day long. And that brings me to my second point, which is on the latest Breakout Finder podcast. And for those of you that missed it, you can now find the podcast on the Roto Underworld Network. Yes, Matt Kelly is playing Monopoly, and he now owns another piece of the Monopoly board. So Breakout Finder is officially under his umbrella. For the longest time, it was under the Breakout Finder network, which I created, but now I have fully branded it with Matt Kelly, and you will hear it exclusively on the Roto Underworld Network, which is very cool for us. It's a big audience. It's a fun audience. So we look forward to releasing there. But on the last episode, Russell Clay called DK Metcalf his number one overall wide receiver in Dynasty, and that's looking pretty smart right now. You look at 2020, you look at overall fantasy production, and there you find DK Metcalf ranked at number 5 overall. So Russell Wilson currently has 2 wide receivers inside the top 5. DK Metcalf is number 7 overall in fantasy points per game. Pretty incredible. It's wild to see this. And DK, you look at his production on the year, his average is about 7.5 targets, 4 catches a game. He's gone over 90 yards in every game. He's scored a touchdown in every game. And my debate point to Russ when he said that DK Metcalf was his wide receiver number 1 in Dynasty was, isn't the concern volume, right? Because you look at historical production. You go back and look at fantasy finishers, the top 10 at wide receiver. Pick a year, any year you want. You go back and look at these guys, and a multitude of these guys that finish in here are typically guys that saw 130, 140, 150 targets. In some cases, you've got Michael Thomas in the 180s, Julio Jones, Antonio Brown have pushed 190, 200. So volume is certainly on the side of many players, and it's a rarity when a Kenny Galladay, 116 targets, creeps in there. It's when Chris Godwin, 120 targets as the wide receiver 2 overall, creeps in there. It's a rarity when these happen. So it's more often than not that volume is a major factor. But how do you get in if you don't have major volume, which is what is going to continually take place in Seattle? Right? Last year was the first time 2 wide receivers in Seattle history had both had 100 targets under the Pete Carroll era. Last year was also the first time a rookie had ever had over 100 targets, DK Metcalf. So what are the odds that these 2 wide receivers see enough volume, or DK in particular, to put himself into the top 10? I think it's unlikely. I think DK finds himself with just slightly more targets than the year prior. We could see him in the 115, 120 range, which again has been about the bare minimum to typically get in if you aren't the Tyreek Hill type, if you aren't the big explosive player like Tyreek Hill is down the field burning guys for 90 yards. But guess what? We're seeing that with DK Metcalf. So the way that you mend the distance when you're not getting the target share is touchdowns. And currently DK Metcalf is averaging a touchdown per game. The guy has 3 touchdowns in 3 outings, and at this point in time, it almost feels like DK Metcalf is going to score a touchdown every single time he's on the field. This is what we're witnessing. I mean, two of his final games in the regular season last year went for touchdowns, and then of course you have this year 3 games, all touchdowns. So it's incredible. I don't know what to tell you. I think DK Metcalf is truly ascending right before our eyes. Russell Clay may be right. If DK Metcalf can end up in that Dez Bryant type cut of cloth with touchdowns, a consistent 10 to 14 touchdowns, then yep, he can definitely end up in the top 10. Will he end up number 1 overall? I don't know. I still think that that's an incredibly difficult realm to reach when you're not cresting that 140, 150 target range. Now, Tyler Lockett gets hurt and DK Metcalf suddenly sees 9, 10, 11, 12 targets a game, then it's absolutely possible that he gets there. I think we're just scraping the surface with DK Metcalf. I mean, don't be surprised when he has a game here eventually with 7 catches for 185 and 3 touchdowns. Those games are coming. I mean, that's what's not even being factored in here as well. He's on this Average pace right now, 90 yards a game, 4 catches, 1 touchdown. That's excluding variance. Again, there could be one of these games squeezed in there where it's 6 catches for 135 and 2, and all of a sudden, boom, that wake happens, and he vaults up a little bit, and he creeps his way closer and closer and closer and eats his way towards that final goal. So do I think that 1 overall is lofty? Yes. Do I think it's improbable? No. But if I had somebody that I wanted to root for, of course, it would be a Seattle Seahawk, and of course, it would be DK Metcalf, who is one of the most exciting wide receivers we've seen in a long time. He killed Stephon Gilmore. He had a ball last game knocked out of his hands in Deshaun Jackson style. He slowed up on his way to the end zone and had the ball punched out of his hands 3 yards away through the goal line. And he cost himself another TD. So DK Metcalf is on a wild ascension. And, I took this post to Reddit. I played the clip of Russell Clay and us talking about DK Metcalf being number 1 overall. And predictably, Reddit shit all over it. Reddit does not believe it. I mean, let me read you some of the comments on Reddit. If you guys are interested, I will link to the Reddit post if you guys aren't on Reddit and have seen it. I occasionally go to Reddit. Reddit is a great group of people. Don't get me wrong. It's smart people. They're invested in Dynasty. They do their research. They're a great group of people. But at the same time, they pull no punches. They give no fucks. They will come right after you. And, like this guy. So the post basically says DK Metcalf could be the number 1 wide receiver overall in 2021. This guy goes, where was this? God, as I'm skimming through here and I lose it. Basically, this guy goes, best wide receiver in the league. That's an unnecessary bold take. If you said top 10, that would still be a big deal. Dumb. Okay. I responded to him and said, you are not invited to my birthday party. That's where I get back to him. So then this guy goes, yeah, I don't really see it. He'll be solid, but come on. The best? He won't even be the best in his division in 2021. What is going on here? Is this a DeAndre Hopkins comment? What is that? And then what happens is, what I love about Reddit is Reddit eventually melts all over itself. It turns into this just ball of have you ever seen a cartoon where like a bar fight starts and there's just dust and bang, I can't think of it. There's like explosions happening and it's just this bar brawl scene ensues. Well, that's what happens on Reddit. And I just let it go. And it just turns into just a fucking war zone. And these guys are going at each other. People are saying DK will be number 1 overall. Guys are saying DK is not even a top 20 receiver. Just crazy shit happens on Reddit. One guy goes, gimme Deontay. I just saw this. This guy said, gimme Deontay Johnson. Holy shit balls. Anyways, well, I should have never gone back to this post. It was a terrible idea. Nonetheless, I will give you guys the post if you're interested. It's always fun to go to Reddit and see what these guys are chipping in because it's always way over the top. Some guys are too much for me, so I just show up for a little bit and then I leave. And that's exactly why. The Deontay Johnson comment is exactly why I don't go back. But this Sunday, I had a great little Sunday going because for once I did literally nothing. Typically, I'm very busy. But my daughter and my wife were out of the house for a few hours, and so I had the house to myself. So I decided I was going to lay on the couch, I was going to watch football games, I was going to do nothing, and that was it. And it was great because I literally never get the opportunity to power down. I'm always writing, editing, podcasting, database updating. And that's not even including, the work, the family, all these other things. So needless to say, it was an incredible experience to just hear nothing, to just have the games on and lay back and decide to not do anything for the whole day. So let's fast forward to dinner time, and my wife and my daughter, they purchased these beef patties that have cheese stuffed in them. I don't know if you have or haven't seen them. If you're interested, they sell them at Costco. They're pretty big patties, and I had never cooked them before. And so they brought them home, and, I was getting things ready. And I decided I was going to take them out of the refrigerator, put them on the counter, and let them sit for a while, kind of get to room temperature, so they weren't frozen. They're not cold. I mean, do the same thing with steak. So, 15, 20 minutes goes by. I go out to the grill. I scrape the grill. I get it to temp. And I go back inside. I put the burgers on a plate. I take them outside, right? Stock and standard. No different than I always do it. Take those 6 patties, throw them on the grill, close the lid, let the grill do its thing, okay? A few minutes later, 5 minutes, 6 minutes later, I'm sitting down watching the Saints play the Packers, and my wife goes, "The grill's smoking a lot." Now, admittedly, I can't see the grill from where I'm sitting. I don't have a view of it. I can't see out the door, but I respond anyways. I go, "It's going to do that, babe. It's a grill." And she responds back with, "Yeah, well, I've never seen it smoke like this." And I go, "Babe, who knows more about the grill, you or me? Who's made every burger? Who's made every steak in this place? I have." And she goes, "It's very smoky out there." And I go, "Well, guess what? It's a mirage." And she comes back to me and steps a little closer to me and she goes, "Maybe you should go check on them." And I go, "Fine." I go, "And guess what I'm going to find? I'm going to find a fire in the grill because that's where you'd expect to see a fire." So I walk towards the sliding door to go outside, and at this point, I see the biggest cloud of black smoke I have ever seen in my life just blow past the window. And at this point, I realize things are not good. Things are not good. I have never seen this before myself. So I calmly, not giving my wife any inclination that I know that something is fucking wrong out there, I calmly open the sliding door. I close the door behind me not to allow any smoke out, and I walk over to the grill. And this is where things get dicey. I open the lid of the grill, and there is fucking fire everywhere. There's cheese everywhere. The surface is on fire. The burgers are absolutely torched. It is a 3-alarm fire, and there's no way to rescue this thing. And I just know at this point in time that there is an "I told you so" coming. Deservedly so. I know it's going to happen. So I don't look up at the sliding glass door, which is just off to my right. It's a few feet to my right. I just keep doing my thing. You know, I'm looking in the grill. I'm acting like normal. But at this point, it just feels unavoidable. And I just know that my wife is going to be standing there waiting for me to return fire on the comments that I made. So I pull the charred remains of the burgers from the grill and move them to the plate. And I look up at the sliding glass door, and it slowly opens. And there's my wife. And she looks right at me. She looks down at the burgers that are just torched. Smoke is still coming off of them. They're black as night. She looks at me, soot on my face, as I look like I've just dealt with a fire, one of the worst I've ever seen. I look like a chimney sweep. And she says to me, "You had one job. You had one job." And she pulls the sliding door shut. And this brings me to my next point, guys. Marriage is work, okay? You can't win them all. You're not going to win all the battles. And you need to pick your battles, as I've told you my story about us stand-up paddling in the L that I took that day. Well, once again, I take another L, and I continue to learn. I am growing. I'm learning. And that is part of the game of life and of marriage. So I feel like I'm doing pretty good out there, guys. So don't worry about me. I'm going to get back on my feet. And before I kick into this next topic, because I got a lot I want to talk about, I've been talking about cards a bunch on this show. And if you guys are listening on the podcast, you might not necessarily see this, but I'll talk about it anyways. And if you're watching the video cast, I definitely want to show you guys. So I've recently purchased a couple RPA cards from Panini, which is one of the brands. RPA is a rookie patch auto. They're pretty sweet. If you guys grew up with cards, you're used to the literally paper-thin cards, your typical cards. Some of them look like a refractor. They're shiny. Some of them have a gold flare to them, or they're hologram. They've done a lot of different things. But since then, cards have come a long way. And what they do now is they will literally put cuts of a jersey along with an autograph on a card. And I want to show you two that I've recently purchased and give you guys kind of an idea of what the market looks like. I think both of these are probably PSA 10, which is the highest grade you can get from that grading service. But this one here is the DJ Moore RPA. Let me see if I can make this thing work right here. Let me see if I can. I want to get this thing on here so you guys can see it. So this is my DJ Moore. There it is, RPA. This is number 68 of 99. You can see it's got the number right there on the top. That's a legit autograph, which has been certified by Panini. It's got, literally fabric in there. Pretty sweet card. And they're super thick. I mean, they're like an 1/8 of an inch thick. So it's just very different from the cards that we're used to getting. And then just recently, I won an auction online. Okay, so hold on. So this DJ Moore card, I got this DJ Moore card for about $34 with shipping on eBay. So if it grades out, probably jumps, another 15%. So it might be a $50 card in a slab after it's been graded if it's a 10. So, that's cool. It's got some value. Obviously, we love DJ Moore, so you get him while he's young, kind of not known by maybe the consumer community as much. So you want to be ahead of the curve there. And in terms of being ahead of the curve, I went after one of the 2020 Breakout Finders' most beloved wide receivers, one that we all love. I recently won this card in an auction. I had watched it for 2 days and decided I was not going to put in an offer until about 11 seconds before the auction had closed. It started at about $4. This card ended. I got it for about $75. It's another RPA, but where this DJ Moore card was, it was one of 99, or in this case, 68 of 99. This card, they only made 10 of. It's more of a special version. It's another RPA. And I got this one here. This one is a LaVisca Chenault card. Let's see if I can get this guy on the screen here. So there's a LaVisca Chenault. What makes it rare is the green trim on it. This is one of the Panini black ones. But again, it's got the Chenault autograph. Pretty sweet. Again, they're thick cards. So they're much thicker than the typical cards that you've seen. This one was a little more expensive. Again, it's a little more rare. So it adds a little value to it. But again, when these cards begin to take off, if you're into it for collecting and trying to flip, that's not always the way to make a ton of money. But, a card like this, I might be able to 3 times my money in the future, 4 times my money. Who knows? It's a little rare. It's better looking. In a slab graded out at a 10, again, you can add a lot of value to these cards because guys can go online and you can check, how many of these cards have been graded as a PSA 10 of this version. And if this is the only one on the internet and all the rest graded out at a PSA 9, it'll have even more value because of how rare it is when there's only 25 of these cards. So it's a very interesting thing. Again, let me show you the back of the card for those of you guys that didn't see it. They're pretty slick. And again, down here it talks about how they've got the certification that they stand by the signature. So they're totally valid, authenticated. So really slick cards. This one, the DJ Moore card, just a couple things that I've been trying to kind of get into. Like I said, I've been sort of getting into it a little bit more of late. So if you're into cards and you want to talk more or you have questions, you want me to talk more about cards, I would love to kind of give you guys a little bit of my insight that I'm learning. I'm learning from some of you patrons that have way more experience than I do. So you can get some cool cards for a lot less than I spent. I know one of the patrons just told me he got an RPA, rookie patch auto, of Paris Campbell for $13 in an auction. So very cool. If Paris bounces back and does what we think he might be able to do, that card could jump up a ton in value. And it's fun because as it was explained to me, these are kind of the next level of sort of playing Dynasty, right? Owning a share of a player. You've got a rooting interest, just like you do in Dynasty football when you draft a guy and you're watching him on a team that's no good, but you're watching that game because your player is on that team. It makes it exciting. Again, it gives you this rooting interest. So I kind of feel that way with cards. And again, growing up, having an affinity for cards, having ripped a lot of packs in my day, I'm kind of having fun getting back into it. But as I've told my wife, I'm going to control the spending. I'll work on getting better at cooking burgers. What do you want me to do? Can't do 1,000 things. I only have 2 hands. All right? What do you want me to be, Guy Fieri? I can't be Guy Fieri. I want to be Guy Card Fieri. I don't know what I'm saying. Anyways, so that's my rant on cards this week. There's a lot of sweet ones out there, a lot of really cool auctions. So if you guys have questions, I'll try to give you the insight that I have, something I'm getting into more. But again, as I am learning as a married man, and again, I've been married 12 years. I've been with my wife a very long time. So take it from me. I've got a lot of experience, guys. I know how close I can fly to the sun with my commentary with her. But I'm learning, and I think in the same way that some fantasy owners are learning patience, because patience is a virtue. I mean, take Andy Isabella, for instance. This week 3, Shout-outs to Andy Isabella for his blow-up week. Probably the best game he's had thus far. I put a post on Patreon today. You guys can check that out. 4 catches, 47 yards, 2 touchdowns, 20.7 fantasy points. Thank you, Andy Isabella. Thank you. Christian Kirk was out. He took advantage of the opportunity as the 4th highest snap share wide receiver on his own team. So pretty good production. All things considered, he only had 4 targets. But the reason that I say patience is a virtue is because Andy Isabella was left for dead in many dynasty leagues. When the Christian Kirk hype had built up, Andy Isabella died, right? Like he wasn't getting opportunity playing. He was more on special teams. Things just hadn't gone in his way. And because of that, Andy Isabella slipped in many leagues. But why would Andy Isabella, slip or die in many of these leagues? Well, of course, a player that breaks out slightly later, wouldn't it make sense that he would come from a school like UMass, right? Doesn't that make sense that he would come from a college like this that's not one of these big D1 schools? Because I remember Andy Isabella torching the Georgia Bulldogs and going one-on-one with first-round corner DeAndre Baker. And then again, he stood out at the Senior Bowl. And all of this took place before we even began to account or talk about his ridiculous speed or athleticism that he displayed. So Andy Isabella was the total package. I mean, very much Brandon Cooks in that right, and we're beginning to see it. Because these second-year guys become these ultimate buy low options. But they're semi-risky, right? Owners are afraid of these second-year guys that haven't quite broken out. Dynasty owners would rather move on from them than ride owning a bust into the ground, right? They're afraid of the Laquan Treadwells, the Josh Doxsons, the Corey Colemans, the Nelson Aguilars, the Kevin Whites. The list goes on forever. I mean, I could go back in time and name so many first-round busts, it would bend your mind. But in this world of these busts and this risk, there's this corner of the market, this deep, dark corner of the market where you find these other types of players. You find these DJ Charks that people had given up on that has suddenly become a top 20 dynasty value or higher for many people. It's where you would have found Kenny Golladay, right? Because Kenny Galladay's college production was not what people would think, or professional production was not what people would think. And he was left for dead by many people that kind of gave up on him. What about Devontae Parker? Look at Devontae Parker now. I realize that Parker is now aged a bit, but the production still stands. And Parker has suddenly got this true value in Dynasty. And he was literally almost valueless at points. And what about guys like Demaryius Thomas? I mean, if you guys played back in the day, then you would remember that Demaryius Thomas was a guy that had played 10 games in his first season, 11 in his second, caught 22 balls his first year, caught 32 balls his second year, basically left for dead at age 25. And let me tell you what he did from age 25 on. 94 catches, 92 catches, 111 catches, 105 catches, 90 catches, 83 catches. He was incredibly fantasy relevant. He was a top 10 wide receiver for years. But this was a guy that, again, was left for dead. What about Robert Woods? Robert Woods is another great example. You go look at early Robert Woods, 40 catches in his rookie season, 587 yards. So that should have been sort of a sign that, okay, this guy probably has what it takes in the league. It's not super high-end rookie production as we've seen from some of these 2014 wide receivers, but it's good enough. Then he got his first 100-target season his second year, 65 catches for about 700 yards. And then he kind of fizzled for 2 years, and people didn't really catch on 2 or 3 years. And then suddenly what we've seen from Robert Woods over the past 2 to 3 years has been short of mind-bending. This guy essentially went 5 years before he truly put up a significantly relevant fantasy season. But he was too left for dead, right? Like many of these other guys. And to a far more extreme extent, it's this corner of the world where people wrote off Devontae Adams, right? Russell Clay brought it up on the podcast. He mentioned, if we go digging, we're going to find a lot of really, really bad Devontae Adams tweets. And that's true because Devontae Adams, his first 2 years in the league, they didn't look good. The guy had 94 targets and 50 catches his sophomore year for 483 yards. He, again, was also left for dead. But what would it cost you to get Devontae Adams today? You could hardly afford Devontae Adams if you tried. So Russell Clay was spot on with this take that you don't leave these guys for dead because they can eventually break out. Look, we saw it turning the corner in Paris Campbell's career before yet again an unfortunate injury. So you don't quit good players. You can't quit them. And this is also a cautionary tale for those of you that bought Denzel Mims, the breakout finders wide receiver 11, who had a breakout rating of 27.6, well above the 20.0 threshold that we typically use to sort of decide whether this guy is worth the investment. And this isn't a run for the hills and sell moment with Denzel Mims whatsoever. This was a player who was drafted in the second round, absolutely insane athleticism, crushed the Senior Bowl competition, and we've seen in the past that being successful at the Senior Bowl translates to being a quality player at the NFL level, especially if it's tied to the draft capital. Deebo Samuel, Cooper Kupp, Tyler Lockett, just to name a few, all of these players have been successful at the NFL level. And to this point of his career, he hasn't played an NFL game yet due to the hamstring strain from the offseason. And as much as I think that it should matter with missing time and the injuries, I'd rather he come back 100% before running any risk of an additional multi-week injury. And I think we all agree we'd rather see Mims at 100% than see him at 82% with the potential that he pulls something or strains something again. Because this Jets offense is dying for a playmaker. Listen, they've got Chris Hogan, Braxton Berrios, Josh Malone. No wonder Sam Darnold has no confidence. That guy is dead behind the eyes. Have you watched any of his most recent interviews? He's dogging on himself. Okay? Yet, upon Denzel Mims' return, it's not inconceivable to think that he could pace every other rookie wide receiver in per-game target share until the end of the season. That's a possibility. So if you're a Denzel Mims owner, keep holding. Even Adam Gase prior to the season spoke about Mims' improved route running, something that was a knock against him, during his time at Baylor and during the Senior Bowl. But you don't just throw in the towel on guys who look like Chris Godwin. You just cannot do it. And as far as the injuries for Mims, I'm chalking this one up to a once in a 100-year phenomenon that's taken place with COVID-19 and this pandemic and a lack of preparedness all around for players. Everyone is hurt. Barkley is hurt. McCaffrey is hurt. Cortland Sutton is hurt. Take your pick. Throw a dart. You're going to hit a wide receiver or a running back or somebody that got hurt. So I'm not putting this on Denzel Mims. Because back at Baylor, Mims hardly missed a game, let alone a snap. It's not in his profile. Mims is a rock-solid competitor, player, healthy playmaker. I just don't attribute this to Denzel Mims, the player. So to assume he's some injury-prone bust prospect entering Week 4 of the NFL season, even though he's yet to play a single snap, is absolutely absurd. So listen. Everyone just needs to take a deep breath, believe in the process, and buy into the fact that it's talent over everything, and all of these turncoat fantasy gamers that are giving him the cold shoulder are doing it wrong. And if you can add him to your roster, do it. And if you've got him, just sit back and wait because good things are coming.